What?
That's all on there. Alrighty. Do a 3, 2, 1 sync. And welcome to the Anyone podcast. I'm joined today with my cohort from our college radio days, Benjamin Benessi.
How's it going, Mike?
From such shows as Live from South 4th Street and guest appearances on Cat Dog. And what was your show? What show did you have before that?
I had 2 shows. I had Most Excellent, and then I had Bogus Radio with Chan.
Yeah. And then, Live from Sofo with me. Everyone living on South 4th.
Yeah.
For for the massive amount of audience who keeps up with their careers and commentary / radio, they'll appreciate this reunion of sorts. But so the podcast has had a brief hiatus. Decided to come back and decided to bring someone who wasn't talented or creative at all onto the show and mostly talk about video games is what I want to talk to you about, because I actually, as I said it I think 2 podcast episodes ago, that I don't really play any new video games anymore. I talked about my NES and my Tetris habit and stuff like that.
And since I've moved out of the city, back to Connecticut, been playing a lot of video games.
A lot of video games. That's all there is to do in Connecticut.
Yeah, just about it.
Yeah, and I mean this is a good time for video games though, right? Like everybody's anticipating all these sequels that are. Yeah. I feel like 2018 or like the last E3 announced like all of these follow-up projects to all these great franchises.
Yeah, this year at E3 they announced Bethesda announced Elder Scrolls 6. It's supposed to come out. It's slated for some time in the next few years. I think when they released the announcement, it was pre-production. And they also have 2 major franchise launches before that comes out. So.
Yeah. Is there any like teaser as to what those are?
There's one called Starfield, I believe, and I don't know the premise. I think it has something to do with space, but I haven't really looked into it.
I instantly think of like StarCraft, which I actually enjoyed when I was younger, StarCraft, but I wonder if it's like a strategy-based game.
I was almost imagining, just in like the canon of like Bethesda games, I was imagining something like open world, but I was picturing something more like No Man's Sky, but with more of purpose to the game, rather than just like free roam and like exploration.
Sure, like No Man's Sky is a perfect example of like too much open world.
Yeah,
like
it's just like what would a game
because it gets and it's like and it makes like it's infinite possibilities, but that's boring. It turns out like people need to be told what to do.
Yeah, and basically they're just constantly generated worlds, like there's just like this element of randomness to it that like you couldn't see it all like in your lifetime. They try to make it as realistic as
but even like the things that are different or new that you encounter in that game, I feel like weren't that exciting after a while. Like it's like you encounter everything kind of, and then everything else is some sort of variation on those core things.
I agree. I think that at a certain point, like the variation is just kind of like mix and matching,
Right.
It's like changing.
Still a brilliant game in its own right. Like I respect that
Super
about
cool.
it so
Beautiful
much,
game.
but it doesn't surprise me that if like the developers thought this game is going to be playable forever and then learned that instantly that was not true, that people would have a very limited time with that game.
I think they must have encountered like that idea at some point that like they're like, even though this technically is the most expansive game that exists, that it has a much shorter like entertainment lifespan than a lot of other games, because of the fact that like there's not too much to actually do. You're basically just every time you get to a new galaxy, you're just trying to get like stuff to warp to the next one,
Yeah, and I think that kind of in general combats that idea of like video games as an art form and stuff, because I do believe video games are an art form, and it's like, especially for both of us studied film at Pace University, but how it's like sort of this idea of like you're taking film and making it interactive, and like that's sort of the appeal. Like if I had to like say why do I like video games, I think that's a big part of it. But it's like No Man's Sky could be considered a piece of art. That doesn't necessarily make it a good video game, which is, you know what I mean?
Yeah, elements of it are, very beautiful.
Right.
But,
and then speaking of too much open world, you and I actually talked about this before, but you've been playing Fallout 76. Yeah. Bethesda's other announcement at E3.
Yeah.
And you're underwhelmed significantly.
Yeah, I think that it was just like an interesting thing they did, and I've always been a fan of the franchise of Fallout. And,
yeah, I clocked out at. I played some of New Vegas. The last one I really got into, I think it's the first one most people got into, was Fallout 3, a Game of the Year edition.
It brought a lot of people on. The same way that I mean, obviously Oblivion was an amazing game in its own right, but Skyrim brought it like into like this limelight, like, mainstream game.
Sure.
But Fallout 76, if you haven't played it, is more or less it's basically like the structure and physics of Fallout 4, but there's no NPCs. There's no one to speak to in the game. You trade with like robots and vending machines, and there's really no concrete missions. It's more of just like this straightforward like survival game. Like you basically rely on scavenging and looting. Like,
you're playing against other online players.
Yeah, and it's an MMO.
Is there any sort of collaboration amongst other online players in the game, or is it merely like PvP, like almost like a battle royale kind of thing where you're just trying to kill everybody else in your server?
Their intention was that people would join up and adventure together, but what I'm seeing so far is that
why would you ever think that?
Yeah, it's because that would require all your friends to buy the game, or you to meet people online and to start doing things like that, which does happen. But I think the way most people are playing it right now is they're just playing it solo, because I mean that's what at the root of it what Bethesda makes is like solo, like one player adventure games,
right?
And so a lot of people that went out and bought Fallout 76 were fans of other Fallout games,
right?
So that might not necessarily mean that they care for something like a battle royale, but it seems that like what I've seen so far through the gameplay is that it does just end up being like PvP and like people just trying to take on other players and shit like that, which is cool in its own right. But there's only 24 players on each server,
and the map is pretty expansive.
The map is pretty large.
What is it comparable to?
I think it's comparable just to the size of Fallout 4.
Okay,
it's probably a little bit bigger, but
really
Yeah, but
Fallout 4 is pretty big.
Yeah, Fallout 4 is pretty big, but I think it probably rivals it in size.
Right.
But
that's cool. I mean, that's exciting, but like a lot of the things that I find appealing about Fallout, like I feel like I would enjoy the game like for maybe a week, because it's just like running around, looting, like seeing what characters look like, what different creatures are sort of incorporated into it, collecting the new weapons, because that's always like a big thing with Fallout. Oh, are there collectibles?
I found like a couple collectibles. I don't know the extent of how many there are, or like how many different types.
Weird. That's really weird, because Fallout in general, just like I feel like it almost relies on collectibles. Like the bobblehead thing was like one of the most fun things to do in Fallout 3.
Yeah, there are some. And what I've kind of found about the game is the whole premise is kind of like if they made a whole game out of the things that you do between missions, like in a regular Fallout game, like scavenging and just running through every house you see and finding stuff. And they do like online events where like there'll be a concentrated area of like enemies, and people go in and try and take
Sure. I mean, I think that's typical in all of the Fallout games, sort of as well. What's the thing with? So I'm curious about this. As someone who like has not touched the game at all, read a few reviews, obviously saw like the E3 stuff about it and the trailers and stuff that have come out since. What's the deal with this Mothman thing? Is that like a thing?
I guess so. I was playing the other day, and I didn't know anything about like the whole Mothman lore or inclusion in the game.
Right.
And I just kind of look over to my right, and I just see like these giant red eyes behind these like trees. And
it's like a boss battle-esque scenario.
I walked towards it, and then like it just flies straight up into the air.
Interesting. I'm curious to know.
I don't really know
what the thing, if there's any sort of thing there where you're supposed to chase him down, or if there's some kind of final battle between you two.
I asked one of my friends who's also playing the game, and he said that he didn't know either, but he had encountered the same scenario. So I guess it's just something that players see. And there's a Mothman museum somewhere in the game that you're supposed to go to and like kind of run through. I haven't really gotten like super like deep into the game. I think I've played like 4 or 5 hours, like past all the expository stuff.
Right. Is there any narrative for this game, or what's the thing? It's set in West Virginia, obviously.
If there is, I haven't found it yet.
Okay.
You kind of just wake up in the vault and you create your character and you leave. And that's it.
Wow.
Yeah, there's no like.
Which is the stark opposite of Fallout 3, where it's like...
Yeah, where you're in there for a long time.
To the point where it's funny, because I feel like people forget this, but I remember when Fallout 3 came out, and there was a huge community of people that said this game sucks, merely because they hadn't gotten out of the vault yet.
Yeah.
Which is, like, wild to me, because, it is tedious, I will say. I do think that it gets kind of a bad rap, because I think there are some interesting things you can do in the vault.
Yeah.
And, even it's a testament to, going back to almost the No Man's Sky conversation we were having before, the expansiveness of things you can do in there. I always skip the test you take in school in the vault.
Of course.
But you can sit down and do that, and it is interesting. That is cool.
It's good for the lore of the game.
That's written into the game. Yeah, totally. And sort of attributing your ability points and all that stuff is critical in that part of the vault. So it's I think after your initial playthrough where you're annoyed by it, it is worth kind of putzing around the vault. But it's interesting to know that Fallout 76 is the stark opposite of that, it seems.
Yeah,
where
it's just no nonsense. You just are thrown straight into it, and that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Outside of Fallout, so Fallout 76 is a game people are talking about. I think it's strongly overshadowed by Red Dead 2.
Yeah.
Which seems to be
yeah, Red Dead 2
the
is,
tits
yeah,
right now. Everybody's going apeshit over it.
Yeah, everyone's really getting behind it.
Right. Not you.
Not me, however. I just, and I guess I should start by saying I have to show respect where it's due, and I think that visually it's
right.
It's beautiful.
You don't think it's bad because Rockstar slacked off by any means?
No, I don't think. No, I don't. I think that everyone. I think they made the exact game that they wanted to make. Mm-hmm. But just for me personally, I think that it's just a little slow.
Yeah.
And everyone sort of jumps down my throat when I say that.
Yeah.
And I don't.
That's the point.
I'm not meaning to be a contrarian, but I just think that it's just riding your horse from cutscene to cutscene, shooting a gun a couple times. Whenever I play, it just makes me want to play Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
Because I'm riding around.
Because it's that, but faster.
Wow, this is great, but it'd be great if I had a car, Yeah. Or this gun is cool, but it'd be cool if I had something fully automatic, and
Yeah.
And I think it just for me personally, I think that maybe I just didn't get into the setting.
Yeah. That's funny. That reminds me of I think we watched this together, and I know we're probably not even allowed to talk about this anymore. But Louis C.K.'s last special before all the allegations came out in 2017, he does a joke about that where he's like Jesus comes back to Earth, and he's like what did you guys do to this place, and why did you need to dig up all the oil and stuff, and everybody's because I wanted to go faster, and I feel that's true of video games. It's this is fine or whatever, but in Grand Theft Auto 5, you can go so fast, and there's these amazing cars and vehicles, and you can get to places and explore more in a shorter amount of time, and I don't know, to an extent, I understand why that's bad for humanity, but awesome for video games. It's it's a video game should be. You can do these things that are outrageous and I
don't really want to live the true experience of living in the Old West,
Right.
And it seems that's what
there's no fast travel or anything?
So apparently when you upgrade your home base to a certain level, you can fast travel to it.
Okay.
But the first I think I played 6 hours of it total.
Yeah.
To really understand that I didn't like it.
Right.
And there's just so much stuff to deal with in the beginning.
Right.
But I don't think it's worth it.
And I've also heard, much going back to Fallout 3 and the Vault intro sequence, that the intro sequence in this game is very, very tedious. The horse riding through the snow. Again, I haven't played this game, so I don't know.
Having to listen to everyone speak, and there's no way to bypass it. It kind of basically, if you had played Skyrim and the level, or not the level, the intro where you're riding down the mountain in the carriage. And you're waiting to be able to play the game. That kind of feels like the first 4 hours of gameplay of Red Dead.
Yeah,
it's just the carriage intro.
But Skyrim isn't something I necessarily attribute to that slow feeling. I'm sure I get why people have felt that, but
just the part where you're just when do I get to play the game? But that is only maybe 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
This is like...
And then instantly, like not long after that, you're designing your character quickly as part of that sequence. There's things
Yeah,
like...
exactly.
Is there any sort of character customization in Red Dead?
No, you play as, I think his name is Arthur Morgan. And so yeah, you're just thrown right into the...
Well, so Red Dead Online is confirmed, right? That's a thing that's happening.
I believe they said it was supposed to launch at the end of this month, but
okay.
I know Rockstar's delayed things like GTA's.
Sure,
before, so.
but it's happening.
Yeah,
like it's safe to say.
It's slated for,
and I mean, if it's anything like GTA Online, I'm sure it's gonna be fantastic. I think GTA Online, and like maybe not so much people are doing it now, but I think certainly like when people look back at the history of video games, I think that's gonna be something people point to as like a lot of people point to like a lot of like online video gaming as being like Halo 2. Like Halo 2 is like the online video game that like kind of took the scene by storm and made Xbox on like live like very popular and very addictive. I feel like people are gonna look at GTA in a similar way, that it really raised the bar for online gameplay.
Yeah, I think so.
Which I think is funny because it's honestly something that has pushed me away from playing a lot of contemporary video games a lot, and it's like this removal from the idea of a campaign or playing a campaign like a traditional one, because like Halo Online, like Halo is one of my favorite franchises of all time, but Halo Online was always fun and I always enjoyed it probably as much, and I had those experiences like a lot of people had, but like I very much look forward to Halo for the campaigns. Like
Halo 2 was one of my favorite video games.
The story is fantastic. Like it's just good sci-fi writing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's a genre I've always like gravitated towards, and so playing those things. But even if I look back on like, this is gonna sound cringy, but like even like Call of Duty games, like the first Modern Warfare campaign was like really fun.
Yeah.
And like even kind of leading up until very recently, I think like those campaigns were cool.
The newest one doesn't have a campaign. The newest, I believe the newest.
That's insane to me.
4,
That's insane.
They removed it.
Especially because I hate Call of Duty's online like culture. It's so weird and like it's. I mean, it's like, and you and I back when we lived on South Fourth, we used to play a good bit of Call of Duty. We should play Call of Duty tonight, but
maybe
maybe split screen. I don't know. We'll see. But it's like I don't know, the whole like gun thing, or like see when we played online though, we played like older online. We played like Black Ops 2 online.
Yeah, we were.
Or even Black Ops Online, like stuff like that. When we got it, neither of us really liked the Infinite Warfare online stuff.
I enjoyed playing the Modern Warfare remaster that came with Infinite Warfare.
Right, that's right. Yeah. I remember playing that with you as well.
And I like, the thing is, it seems like the culture had just like seeped over to that because it's a newer game. It's like younger people playing it, and it just like, I don't know. It feels like very much like everyone is like trying to like compete at some like higher level than just enjoying like video games. Like there was always like that competitive nature, but it almost seems like people are like watching Twitch all the time now, and like they're like gaining like strategies. So you have like you meet these people that just like divert to like the same strategies over and over again. It's like it's weird to play an old game with like new players like that. Yeah,
I'm sure, and it's funny that that's the case, because I think that also explains a lot of the culture around like Fortnite, which is like which is funny because there's like, I really enjoyed the idea of battle royale as a thing. It comes out of like ideas like when we were teenagers, stuff like when books like The Hunger Games were coming out. I think the appeal, or like you were a big Maze Runner fan, I know, like when you were younger, like in that, like I know it's like for a lot of people it's kind of cringy, that like young adult genre. Yeah. But I think a big appeal of that is this idea of this massive arena and people being forced as almost gladiators to battle, to duke it out in this setting. And I think that is cool, and I still believe that. And I think other games have done it better than Fortnite, like this Hunger Games-esque scenario. Like, for example, I think that PUBG is like, I think it blows Fortnite out of the water. Like,
and they're getting a console release very soon.
Yeah, that's sick. I can't wait for that. Like, and it's weird because I feel like when I play Fortnite, there's not any reason for me doing well. Like, I feel like it's like I shot a gun and I got lucky and I killed someone. Whereas if you play PUBG, it's like there's actual strategy involved, and it's like you get the kill because you did well. You know what I mean? There's like, it's sort of this cause and effect thing with the game, and someone else killed you because they did this really cool thing. Yeah. And I think that is like really reflective of like online gaming culture in general. Like, I don't know, like the whole thing of like upgrading your guns, and like even like it's funny because like when we played Call of Duty, like I said, online, like it was fun trying to like get these guns that we liked and like trying to do these things, and like earning achievements is like a core part of gaming, which is awesome. But like this idea of prestiging always was very weird to me. Yeah. Like it's like I did it. Bet you I can do it again. like you know, fuck you, you know? Yeah. Like at some point. That always kind of confused me a little bit, and I think that is almost the early days of when the culture of online gaming sort of started to like go down. But like going back to my point, like because we've drifted off it a little bit, but like I just miss campaigns. Like I miss like a good solid campaign. Like Call of Duty was fun. It's like you start off with a time trial always, and you go into this like crazy terrorist mission thing. And like I remember the first time, you'll probably remember this level too, because I feel like a lot of people, especially if like our generation when Modern Warfare came out, in the ghillie suit level, was amazing. I remember like going back and replaying it constantly because it's just so much fun and like very simple and like you know a pretty simple mission in terms of just like you have to be silent and take out enemies, but like so cool, and like the design was amazing, and the way you could hide and like how you could creep and stuff like that was like it was reminiscent of almost like Hitman games, which I still find to be like so cool and addicting. But it's like I wish people would spend more time on that than on sort of just worrying about what the online culture is, especially like I remember like the worst example of this to me is Destiny. Like a game with no plot, all about looting, and
I bought Destiny when it came out, and I was really disappointed because I'm someone who loves like story-based gameplay. Right.
Because there's almost no story in the first one. I actually don't really know a lot about the second one.
I knew I wasn't gonna fall prey twice. You know, I wasn't gonna buy the second one.
Right. There's from what I understand, like I know in the first one because I played the first one a little bit, but like there's sort of these like almost like clans and species like established, and like you sort of understand like there's hints at this great war and sort of these like there's things that there's like this very very thin shell of universe building, and I hope whoever was really into Destiny that the second one expanded on that because
I mean like it was just
because that was it like
it was
that's all you got.
They titled it Destiny and then.
There's no Destiny.
You know, there's no Destiny.
There's no adventure.
The game, you know, I don't care.
Sure. Like
it was fun for like the first couple levels before I realized that was the whole game.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, shit, I don't want to play this anymore.
I'm curious to ask you this. So back when we lived in South 4th Street, because I feel like that's the last time we really bonded over video games together consistently. You were really into Naruto.
Oh, yeah.
You weren't into Naruto the series, but what was the game?
Ultimate Ninja. Oh my god, why am I forgetting the name?
Ultimate Ninja Warrior or something like that? Or
no, it's something. Oh my gosh.
I didn't mean to make you look like a bitch on my podcast.
Yeah, no, I'm forgetting the name.
If you're fun, Google it. Go to Google. You can Google stuff on there.
It's Ultimate something.
But it's essentially like a
it's like a 360 like fighter. Yeah,
like I would much rather like a game like that made into a campaign.
Ultimate Ninja Storm 4.
Ultimate Ninja Storm 4.
Yeah, and that was a fun.
So were there 3 other Ultimate Ninja Storms?
Yes, and then there was one after.
Yeah. See, I feel like I had a similar relationship with Dragon Ball Burst Limit was a big one for me. Yeah. More because, it's funny because while we were at Sofo, you also binged all of Naruto during that time there. I did. And Jesus Christ, like I remember being like worried about you, dude. You watch so much Naruto. And I actually talked to my wife about this recently, that I still harbor like a good deal of resentment for you for how that went down. Do you remember how that went down?
Oh, yeah.
So I started watching Naruto is what happened. I started watching it and you sat down and you're like, okay, let's get into this together, like made it a mutual thing. I think we watched the first 6 episodes together. Yeah. And then I came home from class one day. You were off that day. Or you might not have been. You might have just been staying home watching Naruto. Maybe. Either or.
I forget what the situation
Regardless,
was.
I came home and you were like, oh yeah, dude, I'm on episode 25. Like, don't worry, dude, I'll rewatch them with you. We'll catch up. And I was like, okay. And I remember like watching a couple more, and then like the same thing happened again. And like you were like, I'm on 115, dude. And the next thing you know, I gave up on Naruto, and you had watched all of it and were on to Shippuden, and then eventually now on to Boruto, which is still running, I believe, right?
No, I honestly, I think I watched the first couple episodes and I just kind of fell off.
Boruto?
Boruto, yeah.
Really? Not as good?
I don't know if it's not as good. I think that the only reason I watched it is because I just wanted to see more of like the original characters as adults, you know?
Yeah.
And I just don't really care much for like the actual new characters on the show.
Speaking of another anime we watched together, I had a similar feeling. As much as I enjoyed the series, I really did like Legend of Korra. I had a similar feeling about what I wanted was Avatar: The Last Airbender, and that's certainly
what happened next.
I wanted what happened next, but I also wanted Avatar: The Last Airbender. If you don't know the show, obviously anybody watching a comic podcast probably does, but it's one arc. It's this amazing long, drawn out adventure, and I love that because I mean, in everything we're talking about tonight of themes we like in these things, shows, video games. It's the idea of this huge adventure is awesome. That's so cool, and it's what you glue to. I think, especially if you're younger, but those memories are sort of what you're craving at.
Yeah.
And I think Legend of Korra, it's 4 distinct seasons. There are arcs, and there are strong arcs, but it's not like The Last Airbender was whatsoever. Yeah. And so maybe I didn't necessarily want to see the same characters growing more, but I wanted a similar format of show where it was here's this girl Korra, she's the new Airbender, and these next 4 seasons are going to be
I think
talking about her journey to find herself or defeat some evil, whatever that is.
I think they were unsure of themselves when they started that show because the first season kind of acts independent. The first season almost acts like an introduction season.
Right.
As opposed to Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Which I would argue is the best season, frankly.
Do you like the first season the most?
Well, because
of Korra.
Of Korra specifically, I think so too, because I mean, not to cut you off, but just they introduced the sport, which I can't remember the name of, the airbending sport, which is an amazing mechanic into the series. Pro bending, whatever. In general in films, you know this, I love cult shit. I love when a cult is the villain. I've always sort of been drawn to that idea because it's dark and mysterious and kind of fucked up, and I've always liked that, and that's sort of a big theme in the first season especially. It also comes back in the last season, the 4th season as well, kind of that a similar theme, but. That I loved all of those things, and I could have almost watched 4 seasons of that arc continuing. To
I agree. It's super cool. I just think that they didn't know because I feel like that kind of goes without saying with most reboot series or movies or anything, is that series specifically because they really have to test the waters,
right?
Because they don't want to have to figure out an entire arc of a show as a reboot series,
right?
And just get shut down after the first season,
Sure.
I'm sure that's a hesitancy that most of these writers had. So I think they tried to write something nice and succinct that they could get out, get the whole picture of what's going on in this universe at that time, and then if people liked it, they could build off of it, and then if they didn't, they could cut their losses. But
right.
I think.
But then at the same time, I think I'm not pointing fingers at anybody in the production. Korra is a really good show. It's different than Last Airbender, and that's fine. But I don't think when they made Korra, they expected the fan reaction to be so strong.
Yeah.
I don't think they'd be holy shit, people love this show. They just wanted more of this universe, and we've just given it to them. Yeah. Again, with the aspects like pro bending and even introducing metal bending, which is a new idea into the show.
And so basically. The thing is, the way you're talking about 4 sort of separate seasons instead of an arc, I think that there is something of an arc from the 2nd season onward. Not this clear and present danger kind of way, that, it's not as if they understand the end game of everything they're doing, but she's understanding
the relationship with the spirit world, is that what you're referring to?
And the universe is sort of providing more and more challenges, as she sort of grows as this legendary character, and I think that because the way that it works is kind of one season leads directly into the next, and not in a cliffhanger way, but as a cause and effect way, because the actions of the 2nd season go right into the 3rd, and then the 3rd directly into the 4th. So, it's not as if there's there's no Fire Lord to take down, in the way that the whole taking down the Foundation was the focus.
Right. And fighting the Fire Lord was always going to be the last scene of Last Bender from episode 1.
Yeah, because that from the very beginning that this has to happen, and that's that. But I like that they kind of play it by ear with Legend of Korra, because I think it kind of
they're able to cater a little bit more specifically to what people are responding to.
Yeah, exactly. And they kind of, I feel like it has a sort of different approach to storytelling, in that it's not a villain of the week kind of thing. It's not like Scooby-Doo where they're just encountering constant different people, but it's also not this like giant like long form show like The Last Airbender.
Right.
So it kind of like works in like a more naturalistic way where like, things come up and like you still have to like take care of them and do your job, you know?
Right.
Basically. So I think that's what like drew me to it.
I would probably agree with that. I was just thinking of another time you fucked me over with an anime, and I texted you about this recently, which, because I started watching it finally, is Hunter x Hunter.
That wasn't as bad. That was your fault.
It wasn't my fault, because I was hanging out with you, and you were like, let's watch this anime, and then we watched 3 episodes of it, and you were like, show's over. True.
That's true.
And I was like, what? Because like you were like, I mean, you had led me to believe that like I knew we weren't at the beginning of the show, but we were somewhere in the show. You kind of like were talking me through the characters and stuff, and I got like really, really into it. And it was more than 3 episodes. It might have been like most of the final season is what it might have been.
I think it was after like I feel like it was after the final conflict, and it was like the last few winding down episodes of the show.
No, and it was awesome because that show is fantastic, and as now, like, what has it been, like 4 years? Like 4 years later, I'm finally starting to...
Like 3.
Like 3 years.
Yeah, like 3 years.
No, since our sophomore year. Sophomore, junior, senior.
It's 2018.
Now.
That was 2015.
Yeah.
Actually, no, that was 2016, dude. That was only 2 years ago.
That's not true.
Yeah, dude, I watched all that series in 2016.
Yeah,
watched most of it over the summer of 2016. It's been a little over 2 years.
Yeah, it's been like 4 years.
You're getting ahead of yourself.
Anyways, it's been long enough that I've forgotten whatever the fuck we were watching.
4 years.
Yeah, I've forgotten whatever the fuck we were watching, and I've started it anew, and I'm absolutely in love with it. I think it's such a good show. It's funny because you and I, myself more independently, but you've tuned in here and there, but we've both seen Yu Yu Hakusho. I think there's actually a lot of similarities between those two series. And I like them both for almost the same reasons. Of like, cool. It's very distinct arcs, but there are aspects of like, it's like you follow certain characters, then like their fight styles and their training and sort of their paths are revealed at different intervals. And like, you know, I think it's a really strong anime. And as someone you're much more into anime than I am, as someone who's like a very casual anime viewer who couldn't really get into a knowledgeable discussion of it, I thoroughly enjoy it. I'm like a
Yu Yu Hakusho or Hunter x Hunter.
I mean, both of those, but Hunter x Hunter.
Okay.
Yu Yu Hakusho, I almost don't consider as like something I've enjoyed in my adult life, but just because I'm rewatching it as an adult.
Yeah.
I loved it when I was a kid. Cartoon Network when they had Toonami and all that shit was so good. I was trying to think of this the other day. Do you remember? It's funny because it's almost the same plot as Sword Art Online. Code
Lyoko?
Yeah.
Yeah, Code Lyoko.
That's a really good show.
Yeah.
I remember it being a good show. I haven't watched it.
I was super into that. Like,
it was so cool. Yeah, but isn't that almost Sword Art Online, like where they go into this online universe to...
I mean, kind of, but it's weirder than that. Basically, Code Lyoko was like, they had this like supercomputer, and like there were constantly these like crazy like
viruses,
sentient viruses that were trying to come out of the computer.
That's right.
So they'd have to go in and like beat them down.
Right. Sword Art Online's more of like a battle royale setting, like PvP.
Dude, that's like what the 3rd season of Hunter x Hunter is.
Is it really?
Yeah, and it's way better than Sword Art Online.
Sword Art Online had a really good first season. I tried watching the 2nd season. I couldn't get into it. I think it went really far downhill. And it wasn't even that great of a first season, but there was like, it got you excited. Like I was like, okay, where's it gonna go? And it turned out it was nowhere. But Code Lyoko is funny because I remember the animation style being so cringy when I was a kid, and I really didn't want to watch it for such a long time. And then like one day it was like Code Lyoko marathon, and like I was like kids, I didn't have anything else going on. Like I didn't have to like go get groceries or do anything, and so I was like, I guess I have to sit here and watch this now. And I sat down and like start from the beginning, and like that's a testament to like the animation style I don't think is great. The voices are kind of weird in it, but like the narrative is really, really strong. And as someone who like prides himself on like being able to, you know, identify like really strong writing and like believing that writing in narrative is the driving force of any good project. I think that is like something I will always point to as being like, even as a kid, where it's like animation, cool voices, cool things happening should be what's driving me, being like, fuck, like this is interesting. Like this is what a cool idea. like affecting me as a child, I think it is amazing. Like what a cool. We should rewatch that, dude. I'll be down to watch. Maybe not.
Let's watch what we're watching.
Yeah,
first.
watch. I gotta get through Hunter x Hunter. I'm enjoying it so far. I'm trying to think of other things I want to talk about before we wrap up. Stan Lee died.
Stanley died, yeah.
Yeah, he's dead. Given that this episode isn't particularly comic based, but we are at Anyone Comics, of course. This is the Anyone podcast, and Stanley's dead. It's sad. It's not as sad as, like, I don't know. People are, like, really losing their shit.
I think that,
like, he was old. He was, like, really old.
He was 95. You know, like, he could have died a long time ago, you know? But I think what's, like, cool about him and what makes it, like, sad is that, like, he was such a personality, you know? Like,
sure.
He was, you know, like we were talking about upstairs, like, he hasn't, like, directly, like, had his, like, you know, like...
Yeah, Demetrius made the note of, like, he said, a customer came in and said, like, what was the last comic book Stan Lee worked on before he died? And Demetrius pointed to, like, a Spider-Man in the 60s. Like,
yeah, exactly.
He was like, this is the last thing Stan Lee actually worked on himself.
Yeah.
Again, it's no discredit to his work, but... I think people have a perception of who Stan Lee is.
Yeah.
That's like, and the day before his death, he was working on the next issue of
Yeah.
Captain America. That's just not the case.
Yeah,
Like,
he's been old for a while, is the point.
Right.
And I think that, like, what's cool about it was, like, his personality and, like, his advocacy for comic books. And, like, even outside of that, just, like, doing things you want to do and, like, whatever you're doing, just do it with all your heart, you know?
Right.
I feel like that was kind of, like...
And none of it starts without him. Like, anything, no matter how into comics you are, if you're only into, like, the cinematic universe of Marvel or DC, like, if you read comics when you were a kid or you're into, like, any of the animated series you've seen throughout your life, it's like he's, like, none of that happens without him. So I think, I understand the sadness there. It's just, like, I don't know, like, when people get old, they die, man. And I think I've just accepted that a lot. Like, I'm going to see Bob Dylan with a mutual friend of ours at the end of the month. Yeah. And I'm so excited. And a big reason I really want to see this show is because I want to see Bob Dylan play before I die, because he's a musician who has had such a influence on my life and my career. And the truth is, he's getting up there, and it's like, if he died tomorrow and I didn't get to be that show, the last thing I would be is surprised. Like, what? Like, Bob Dylan's dead? It's like, no shit. Like, it's like he was homeless for half his life before he even started making it. Like, it's like no shit. Like,
I think I was like 12 maybe when, like, someone told me that Bob Dylan was still alive, and
you were shocked then.
When I was a kid, I just assumed he died, like, when the 80s rolled around, you know? I was like, oh, the world's kind of, like, done with Bob Dylan.
Yeah, done with folk. And, like...
just send him back from whence he came.
Yeah.
You know? And, like, I was surprised to find out, like, in the 2000s that he was, like, kicking around.
Right.
You know?
But it's not
he's
like...
still around. He looks like Salvador Dali now.
Yeah, it's but it's not... Like, with Stan Lee, it wasn't to the extent of people like Bowie, I don't think, where it's like, because Bowie kept his sickness very, very low key.
Yeah.
Everybody knew he was releasing a record soon. No one knew it was his goodbye.
Yeah.
And it's like, so, like, all of that accumulation where it's just like, Bowie's dead. He knew he was going to die, and here's his goodbye. Like, here's his last words on the subject. Yeah. It was kind of like, what? Like, it was like this emotional overload almost. With Stanley, I didn't really get that. Like, he was old. He was fantastic. I very recently, partially because of you, actually, got really into the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Infinity War, and I'm starting seeing, like, the big Marvel big picture of it now and, like, really enjoying that. As someone who would say, almost a year ago, I probably would say, like, I'm not really that into Marvel movies, but now I'm, like, really excited about what's to come.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. Like growing up, I never really gave a shit about Marvel comics. Or not Marvel comics, but, like, Marvel characters.
Right.
I guess, aside from, like,
you were more
Spider-Man.
DC. Like,
I think it was DC because DC just had, like, a better, like, presence, you know? Like, in
sure.
terms of, like I don't know, like, cartoons on the weekends and stuff, and, like, I don't know, watching, like, Teen Titans or, like, the Justice League animated series or just kind of stuff like that. And I mean, even, like, right through, like, Young Justice, and now not Teen Titans Go, but
Titans, though, on the DC streaming service, which I haven't seen any of, but I've heard good things.
Have you heard good things?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're skeptical?
I'm skeptical. Have you seen... Wait, are you talking about, like, the live action?
Yeah.
Dude, I don't know. I think I saw, like, the promos, and I saw, like, the characters, and, like, I was just like, shit. Like, this should have never been live action.
But they're saying that the trailer, a big review is that the trailer isn't a very good it's a poor trailer more than it is a true reflection of the show. Like apparently like the whole Robin like fuck Batman thing is apparently taken like really out of context, and like in the show actually works really well.
Really?
Whereas like it's like we're these cheeky teens who are superheroes now. Like guess what? Like
it seemed like the trailer made it seem like Misfits or like Sky High
sure,
or something. You
yeah.
know? And it's like that's not really like what it was.
Right, or even like early Power Rangers. Like,
yeah, exactly. It looked a little bit corny, and I was worried that I don't know. They were gonna...
It's apparently doing okay. I mean, whether I'm gonna subscribe to the DC streaming service in order just to watch this show is another thing. Like maybe when they get some more stuff on there that I want to see, like I'll be interested. But
like Batman vs Superman.
Yeah, exactly.
Throw that up.
The extended edition. I still haven't seen the extended edition. So
I watched it.
We'll let the audience know that Ben is one of the few people that I've ever met that was like came out of Batman vs Superman and was like, it's all right. Like like a lot of people say you love it, but you don't. I know you don't love it.
No, I have never said I loved it. I never even said I liked it. I just like visual effects. So I mean, and I'm not saying, and I never said that, like, I didn't say the movie was good because of this, but I said there were parts of the movie in which I enjoyed, but I can't even remember which parts of those are now.
I can remember some. Like, for a big issue I had was that in the original trailer for Batman vs. Superman, there's this amazing choreographed fight scene with Batman. Where he's like busting through this building, like kicking these dudes' asses. Yeah. And it looks really, really good. But it turned out in the movie that was the only scene of that.
Yeah, it was the only scene where he actually throws
and it's a really
down,
good scene. Like it still is. Like I even remember going home like, well, at least we're getting this. Like that's sick. Like that's cool. Yeah. It almost reminds me of like the first fight scene in Watchmen or something like that, where it's like these like brutal punches are being thrown and like throws him out the window at the end. Like it's fantastic. And you can really feel those punches and shit. But like I don't know. It just, I wanted more of those and less of like Jesse Eisenberg and shit like that.
Yeah, they do.
It's such weird casting, dude. He plays like Mark Zuckerberg in that movie.
Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg is Lex Luthor, and I think that's the parallel.
Yeah, and it's weird how that's becoming more and more true. Like every day, like
they're gonna become one another. Eventually.
Yeah, that's weird. I rewatched The Social Network the other day actually because it was on.
Did you?
I'm using your Prime account, so it was on.
Oh yeah,
I saw it on Prime, or I think it was. Cinemax maybe has it now, which Cinemax has like a surprisingly good streaming film collection.
They have like each of those like services like has like 5 like movies that I'm like, oh holy shit, nice.
Yeah, these are on here. Yeah, and like Showtime. Like what?
You'll be scrolling through like dozens of movies that you just know are shit.
Yeah.
Like you either know they're shit because you saw them, you know they're shit because you didn't see them but you saw the trailer, or you just like know that they're just like.
It's something you'll never watch.
Dude, the other day I came across a movie. It was called The Evil Nun, and it has the exact same like
poster.
Face of like the nun from like the
James
Conjuring
Wan's,
universe, the nun, and it had the same font and everything with like the little cross that hangs off the U or whatever.
Right.
And I was like,
"Jeez, can they do that? They gotta be getting sued."
It's
currently.
wild. I don't know if they can do it, but they sure as hell do.
They did. Yeah.
It's every time like a movie like. It's always horror, but every time horror like a film comes out that kind of gets like decent like following, not reviews but following because the Nun sucked.
Right.
But you all of a sudden out of the woodworks you see all these movies that aren't spoofs, like
they're
real movies that like people put like money and time.
We discussed this recently with there's like an Annabelle B movie now that
what was that called? Anna.
Was it called? Yeah,
it was just called
Anna.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah, that's insane. I actually didn't even realize that it was. They should shorten the title.
Like, they shortened it. They gave the title a nickname. I'm sure.
Which the first Annabelle wasn't very good either. Yeah. The best part of Annabelle, it's funny because there's a really good scene in Annabelle.
Yeah.
That also it shares the same first scene as The Conjuring. That intro to The Conjuring of being like.
Oh yeah.
Where like Patrick Wilson comes in with that swagger. He's like. So tell me about this doll. That's how Annabelle starts. In the first like 5 minutes, that whole intro sequence that's just about the doll is the same in both movies.
Yeah.
That's the best scene of that movie.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, I'm about to watch The Conjuring. It's like, oh, no shit.
Yeah. And dude, The Conjuring, not to get too into like horror and stuff because we should wrap up relatively soon, but like as kind of a last discussion point, dude, I am someone who's always loved The Conjuring. I think it like really put a lot of merit into horror again, especially after like kind of like it's kind of post Paranormal Activity, but like also living in this universe of like, you know, the first Insidious and sort of these like different horror films are popping up. Patrick Wilson's noting himself as like a very popular and talented horror actor.
Yeah.
Because like he's fantastic. I really do love his work.
Yeah,
but,
I like him too. He's cool.
But I remember seeing The Conjuring and one being terrified, which I can't remember how old we were when The Conjuring came out. 13, 14? 14?
Maybe a little bit later than that.
Really?
I feel like 17. When did it come out?
No, it's what you Google it.
Guess,
We're already on our road. But I mean, I'll say it shamelessly. Regardless of my age, I was scared. Like I thought it was a scary movie.
Conjuring. Whoa, it was 2013.
2013.
Oh yes, we were 17.
Yeah. No, I thought it was scary. And
it was good. I mean,
but also like I remember walking out of it not only being like scared, because I feel like when you think of like a scary movie when you're younger and you're like, oh my god, that was so scary. Like you never really get that impulse of like, oh, I want to watch it again right now though.
Yeah.
The Conjuring gave me that where I was like, man, that was so scary, but it was so goddamn good. Like I really want to watch it again. Like it's like it nails the 70s. The casting is fantastic and weird. What's his name plays the dad in that in the first Conjuring? Office Space.
Ron Livingston.
Yeah, Ron Livingston, which is weird casting but seemingly appropriate.
Yeah, he worked that fine.
Right. And like it's really good.
And then that being said, every single other movie
all of
spun off
them.
of The Conjuring is awful.
Even like I kind of had
Annabelle 1, the original Annabelle creation, which is
I don't think I've seen that, but Creation is the sequel, I believe. Or
and
Annabelle Origins, maybe they took the X-Men thing.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, regardless.
They're all Origins, and then The Conjuring 2, which is I guess it's probably the second best out of all of them, but it's very distant, and some of the CGI in that movie is
the CGI can get really bad in that one, and also it's just it's not as strong a movie as the first. The thing is, one thing I like about the movie is it continues the plot of the Warrens, because I like that idea that in this universe, it's actually not these families that are experiencing this paranormal thing, but it's the Warrens who have to experience all of them constantly.
Yeah.
Like that, I think that's an interesting idea, and they do that in the second one. Like the Warrens are very much a pivotal part of that. However, it's just not as good a movie.
Yeah, and then The Nun was awful.
Yeah, I haven't seen The Nun, but I can't imagine it being good. It's weird. The series just like. I don't know why horror doesn't have the same nuance as other genres in cinema, in that, like, I would even go as far to say the first 4 Paranormal Activities, I think maybe the first 3 are good. I think the first 4 are enjoyable. Like, you got something. Like, you got something that's good that people are really responding to and really liking. And then, like, what's this need to be like, money, crush it, like, fuck it. Like, we don't.
Beat it to the.
Like, more. Like, we need more of that. And
I think
not only saying more, but missing the mark on what more of what you want, you know?
There's 2 reasons why horror movies don't, like, flourish in the way that they should or could. And the first one is that every single horror movie is trying to be set up for a franchise.
Right.
And that ruins it. You know, like if you're if you're making a movie only so you can make the next movie, you know, but it wasn't but you don't have a trilogy or something completely planned.
But do you think like The Conjuring and Insidious had those things? Do you think they were trying to set up for a franchise with The Conjuring?
The thing is, Insidious was set up with the first one so it could go into part 2.
The second one's fantastic as well.
Yeah,
I like both of them.
The first 2 are great, but like they tried to do like this rule of 3 things, and they thought they needed a third, and they didn't, and then they thought they needed a fourth, and they absolutely.
Well, in the third one, Patrick Wilson's gone, right? Is that maybe that's the thing? Like cast Patrick Wilson constantly.
One is like different characters. They try to do a Conjuring.
It's the woman. It's the woman, the old woman who dies in the first one. Who's dead?
Who dies in the first one, so it's a prequel.
Still a character.
And then the last one is just another. What was the last one? It's just her again doing some other shit.
She at some point they make one where she's in the spirit world,
so
and she only operates in there.
They go 3, 4, 1, 2. That's how they go. Oh wait, no. Yes, that is.
In Insidious, 3, 4. Then it goes back to the beginning where she's still alive, and then 2 where
where she's dead.
No,
She's
3,
dead. 3 and 4.
2, 3. 1, 4 is what you're thinking of, because 4 is after she's dead, because she's in the spiritual
doesn't the
universe.
second one just follow the first one?
Yeah, that's what I said. 2, 3.
No, so chronologically, 1, 2.
No, but then the third one goes back to the origin. While she's
I'm not
still
saying
alive.
when they came out. I'm not saying 1, 2, 3, 4 is the order the movies came out.
I'm not saying that either. I'm saying when the woman's alive.
There are 2 prequels. Basically, the last 2 movies are prequels, is what I'm saying.
Okay, I understand what you're saying now. I thought there was one that was after Insidious 2.
No, because she's dead.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I thought there was like isn't there a thing where?
No, at the end of Insidious 2, they like show up at some other woman's house, and she's like, it's the 2 investigator guys, and she just follows them around as a ghost to do like.
Right, I thought that was a film in itself, but maybe I'm blending.
And then it's like Insidious, like,
bananas,
yeah.
the candles.
You know, it's like that's
Jesus.
it's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then the second reason is that the reason the Nun sucked is because they're trying to copy Marvel Cinematic Universe in that they're trying to incorporate all themes into a genre movie. Like, there was, like, this very forced romance, this very forced comedy aspect.
What are they incorporating from the other Conjuring movies that is making it a shared universe thing? What do you mean by that?
Is
Annabelle in it, for example?
No. So, basically, the Nun is, like in the Conjuring movies, she's like the nun that like haunts, what's her face? What's her name? Not Elizabeth Warren. What's her name?
Is her name Elizabeth
Warren? No, it's not Elizabeth Warren. No. Who is?
Lorraine.
Lorraine
Warren. Yeah.
Yeah, Ed and Lorraine. And it's like she haunts her, and then it goes to like the origins of that spirit. Yeah. So basically, they're just like every spirit they encounter now is getting an origin story.
You see, that's insane to me because I assume what you're referring to is in the first Conjuring movie, there's a distinct scene that explains Lorraine Warren's motives for doing what she does, and it's that she experienced this incredibly traumatic thing during an exorcism.
Yeah.
And afterwards locked herself in her room for 3 weeks and came out and was fine after the thing, but she had to take so much time to process this thing. Yeah. Is that what the Nun's about? Is that event?
I don't remember.
That affected her so much?
Maybe. I forget. Like, the thing is, it's so forgettable.
Yeah.
Like, it could have been her as a young woman, or it could have been
the thing is,
else.
I believe that because that's just something where it's like, everybody's like, oh, what happened to Lorraine Warren? And it's like, oh, we're eventually going to make a movie or a show. It's like, no, you should never show that. Yeah. That's fantastic. It's fantastic that you never know what happened to her. And you really want to. And you should keep audiences doing that.
Yeah.
Not being like, you want it? You want it? Fucking here it is. Like,
it's like,
here's a shitty movie for you. Like, it doesn't even make sense to the other movie.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. It's just the constant intake of shit.
Because then no matter what it is, this buildup causes audiences to be like, that's fucking it. Like, fuck you, that's it. Like,
yeah, and then
I waited years for this to know it was a nun the whole time. Like,
I guess I'll just go see the next one to figure it out.
Right.
They're just waiting for another good one. That's why people keep going to them. So
that's true.
Anyway.
All right. Anyways, well, we should probably wrap it up. And in summary, play Red Dead, but don't like it.
Yes.
Fallout 76 is whatever. Halo Infinite, maybe. Skyrim's not coming out for another decade. Stanley's dead, if you didn't know. I'm glad to break the news to you. R.I.P. Like, I mean, I know we talk shit about people's perceptions of his death, but he really was brilliant, and rest in peace to Stanley, certainly. Conjuring series sucks, and we got drink and draws last Tuesday every month here at the comic book shop. New comics coming in every Wednesday, so if you're coming to shop for comics, definitely come check it out. Our guest Benjamin, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Of course, thanks.
Good to be doing this shit with you again for sure. It's been fun, and thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.